Something that we do here at Rent Prep, if you're not familiar, is we've been doing these weekly videos. So we started an Ask a Property Manager segment that we do with Andrew Schultz, who's been on the podcast before. And we also have started doing an attorney advice segment. So right now we've been talking with Don Krupins, who is an attorney in California who represents property managers and landlords out that way. So those videos have been great because I'm learning a lot as I'm just talking to these individuals. And one of the things that I learned from talking with Andrew, and if you are interested in getting these, you can always join the Facebook group, but sometimes those things get buried in the feed. The easiest thing to do is to go to rentprep.com to landlord resources. It's a drop down. And on the main page there, you can opt in for our newsletter. And I'll always send those out every week. And one of the things Andrew was telling me about that he does in his business is managing 120 doors. He uses this service called App Toto.
I love this app.
Yeah. APPTOTO, App Toto.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
Hey, everybody. You got Eric and Steve here for another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about tech stack. So some things that you might be able to use for your business when you're managing your rental properties that can help you out. But before we get started, Steve, do you feel like reading Mark's post from the Facebook group?
Yeah, super applicable. I think most landlords run into this situation. Mark says, long story short, here's my situation, which statement like that usually equals, I will waste 15 minutes of your life and have no chance of ever being approved.
Yeah. No real meaning to today's podcast. I just thought it was funny. I thought it was a funny post that Mark put there, and it's very applicable. You definitely have those little tells that, tenant applicants and interested runners kind of put out there. And he must get a lot of the long story short, here's my situation openers on emails and phone calls.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes I like a good long story short situation, right? So I choose to take some of those calls sometimes here. And sometimes I regret them immediately. Sometimes I get off thinking I'm no better for that phone call. But then other times I'm like, wow, it was crazy. That was about as crazy as it can be. I mean, sometimes it's just you need some comic relief in your life, and they usually will provide it.
Yeah, we get some pretty funny voicemails at times, too. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this one on the podcast, but I know, Steve, you came in the one day, and we were all talking about somebody had left a voicemail and as a renter, and they wanted to know about what to do about a poltergeist in their apartment.
Yeah.
And they were saying that it was haunted, and they weren't told about the haunting when they were there, and whether or not they can hold their landlord liable for not telling them about their haunted rental apartment.
True.
And I'm just like, we do tenant screening for landlords. Like,
why are you calling us with this? Yeah. Yeah.
What blog post did you read that you thought we would be the right resource for this question?
We get a lot of those. I think that's exactly, we get a blog post that sends somebody over our way, and we end up being, the sounding board for tenants to release all their anger out onto us sometimes. So we get it from a different sort of point of view, but we definitely deal with some crazy tenant situations for sure. And we definitely deal with situations where we might pull something up on somebody's background check that they weren't real thrilled about. Mm-hmm. And they give us the quote, long story short situation. And, we've got to hear it too. So we get it.
Yeah. And I think that kind of segues nicely into what we're talking about today. So we're talking about tech stack. So what kind of technology are you using for managing your rental properties? And a couple little interesting tidbits. And the reason I thought about this is John in our Facebook group, he kind of posted a text that he got from somebody at 6:27 in the morning. And they were just saying, hello, I called yesterday. And his question to the group was boundaries. What are they?
Right.
Obviously, answering phone calls, texts, and all that kind of stuff at 6:30 in the morning isn't appropriate. Actually, 6:27 a.m. So I thought that'd be the first thing that we'd talk about. And Steve, do you remember the podcast we did with Lee McCarron, the property manager?
Yep.
Yeah, he's out in the Bay Area, yep. And Lee talked about this a little bit. I think it was like episode 156 or something like that. I can actually look that up real quick. I'm just kind of doing that by mastering the rental application process. Episode 159 was with Lee, and one of the things he talked to us about was how he uses Google Voice in his property management business. And the cool thing about Google Voice is it's free regardless how you're using it. So you can be a solo landlord with one property or a property manager with 150 units like he does, or I'm not sure how many he has offhand that he manages. But One of the features of Google Voice is do not disturb hours, and it also works for text. So if people want to text you or call you, it'll automatically not disturb you, and you don't have to worry about getting those calls kind of running to your phone.
And these crazy people don't have your real phone number.
Yeah.
That's pretty important too, you know.
That is a great detail.
Yeah. So, obviously, and I've seen some landlords go out of their way to post things like, don't contact me between these hours, only contact me from here to here. But I feel like there's easier ways to do it, using Google Voice, things like that.
Yeah, and if you look up the show notes for this episode, I'll try and link to a couple resources that we have for you. Another resource actually that I share with the group is another thing if you are a landlord who uses Gmail and Google Apps and that. If you're using Gmail, one of the things you can use, and we use it at the office here, is canned responses. So if you're not familiar with this, this also came up in the group because one of our members, I forget her name at the moment, but she was saying that she was getting overwhelmed whenever she was listing her rental property. Because if she's putting it on Craigslist or maybe some service that doesn't have like a messaging service built into it, she was getting so many email requests about it that she said she just couldn't keep up with it. So Steve, how have you used canned responses in the past? And can you give us kind of like a brief explainer of what they are?
Yeah, so canned response is either an automated or a shorthand response to something that you use a lot or all the time. So a good example of what we do here, we have live chat. And these screeners are used to answering pretty much a lot of the same questions over and over and over. So a lot of people will come to our website, click on the live chat and say, what's your pricing? So instead of the screener taking the time each and every time to say, check out our pricing page, here's the link, let us know if you have any questions, they just hit the canned response, which I think is Alt-P probably, I think for pricing page. It automatically drops in exactly what they're going to say every single time, and it will literally type everything, include the link, and do everything for them in one shot. So you're hitting two keys instead of typing that whole thing, the whole sentence out. May not seem like a big deal, but to that landlord who's been answering emails like crazy, that's a lifesaver.
Yeah. And in this specific example that I created the video for, and again, if you search for this episode on our website and look in the show notes, I'll include the video for that. So what I did was I created the video that shows exactly how, if you have a Craigslist posting, that you can take messages that are coming from Craigslist. They have a very specific email handle. So they're at house.craigslist.org. And the house, for some reason, there's no E on it. So you can create a filter inside of Google in Gmail and say, whenever you get an email from this, send an auto canned response email. And in that email, what I would put to somebody is letting them know again about the screening criteria. Because this is also another thing that comes up a lot and we hear a lot about from landlords and clients is that they will put their screening criteria in a listing and they'll clearly state, no animals, no smoking, rent to income ratio of this. And then they get all these applicants that don't meet any of their criteria.
Right.
And I really can't blame them because I'm guilty of this too. I look at the pictures and the price and then I, start making decisions and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't qualify or whatever, even stuff online. I never read the descriptions, it seems like.
Right.
So I think one of the things you can do is if you do have some sort of system set up by using canned responses and automation, is that you can force that person again to acknowledge, now there's no pictures or things to distract them, to acknowledge that, hey, we have these certain criteria in place. And you probably wouldn't want to list every criteria because you don't want to scare them away before you even have a phone call conversation with them. But hey, here's my smoking policy, here's my rent to income ratio, and I do run a background check if you run a background check. And those type of things might be able to deter somebody who's not a good applicant.
Yeah. And in the end, it's just going to save you time from having to have these conversations or communications back and forth with people who just don't qualify. You're just wasting time with them. So, any chance you have an opportunity to let them know and to let them know, here's your chance to walk away and you go your way, I go mine, and this isn't the right fit for you. I say that's a perfect opportunity to use a canned response. So that landlord that was dealing with so many responses and having to deal with so many emails, like I said, this could be a lifesaver. This could be something that takes you from 50 responses on a weekend to 10 legitimately qualified responses. And you're not wasting time with so many people explaining, oh, that's right, we have a no smoking policy. So clearly you're not going to want to be here. Or no, we're not going to make an exception for your 2 pit bulls. It's a no pet policy. Sorry.
Something that we do here at Rent Prep, if you're not familiar, is we've been doing these weekly videos. So we started an Ask a Property Manager segment that we do with Andrew Schultz, who's been on the podcast before. And we also have started doing an attorney advice segment. So right now we've been talking with Don Krupins, who is an attorney in California who represents property managers and landlords out that way. So those videos have been great because I'm learning a lot as I'm just talking to these individuals. And one of the things that I learned from talking with Andrew, and if you are interested in getting these, you can always join the Facebook group, but sometimes those things get buried in the feed. The easiest thing to do is to go to rentprep.com to landlord resources. It's a drop down. And on the main page there, you can opt in for our newsletter. And I'll always send those out every week. And one of the things Andrew was telling me about that he does in his business is managing 120 doors. He uses this service called App Toto.
I love this app.
Yeah. APPTOTO, App Toto.
So I have a scheduling app that I use that is nowhere near the capabilities that App Toto brings to the table. So I use Schedule Once, which just basically allows me to email a link to somebody and they can select my available times based on my calendar.
So kind of like Calendly or something it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a service like that before, yeah.
Yeah, it just integrates into your calendar, and it allows people to choose time slots for meetings, things like that. For me, getting a lot of inquiries for various things, it's a great way for me to be like, hey, here's my schedule. That way it eliminates that 2 or 3 emails that it takes of saying like, how's Friday at noon? How about Thursday at 2?
Yeah.
Boom, here's my schedule, pick something. I love App Toto because it takes that same sort of concept, but it also puts in reminder texts, which is awesome. So explain how Andrew uses that for managing properties.
Sure. Andrew was actually telling me that it's something that he started using because his chiropractor was sending him reminder notices for appointments. So I know that I get these from my dentist. I think he uses a service called Demand Force, which is a little bit more expensive. But basically his chiropractor was saying that when he started using this service that his no-shows dropped to like almost nothing. And before, especially for a chiropractor, I mean, a no-show is money out of your pocket. Mm-hmm. For a landlord, it's really your time. So if you're, setting up your rental listing and then you're getting these email replies and you got your automation set up there, and then somebody's making it through your funnel and you're having a good conversation in the pre-screening application or the pre-screening process. And then at that point, you can put them into your App Toto system and it's going to have everything set up. So you guys have a certain time that they're scheduled to come and view the property. So that person will get a text message the day before reminding them that they're going to be there. And then they'll get a text message 2 hours before. And I think it's all depending on what you want to set it up as. But that text message, you have to reply yes or no. And if you don't reply anything, then Andrew can log into his service and see, all right, I got a showing at property XYZ in 1 hour, and they still haven't replied yes that they're showing up. So then he can call them and verify that they are going to be at the showing for that rental property.
Yeah.
And for somebody like him who's got 120 doors that he's managing, not having to make those phone calls and only when people don't reply to your automated text. And the really interesting thing is, let's say everything goes smoothly. So they reply, yes, we'll be there. They show up and they're 5 minutes early. The system actually has an app that you can access, and then it'll say, did they show up on time, yes or no? And then when he clicks yes, if they show up on time, yes, they'll get an automated email that sends out to them 3 hours later. And in his process, he just has an email that sends out and says, hey, thank you again for being on time. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the rental. Let me know if you do have any interest, and we will be opening this up to other people. So there is some demand, so just let me know and keep an open communication. So it kind of automates a lot of that messaging for him. And I believe he said the pricing was like $30 a month or something like that.
It's so worth it for the amount of no-shows that you're eliminating, or, the one factor that we haven't really talked about, but we mention a lot on the podcast, the impression that you're giving as a landlord, being professional, being organized, being put together. That goes a long way. There's a psychological factor there for the tenant that is about to give you all of their information. Are they giving your information to somebody who looks like they may lose it? Or are you giving your information to somebody who looks like they have a process for handling all your information and they know what they're doing?
Yeah.
It goes.
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
Yeah, it goes a long way. I really think it's...
I think sometimes too, as a landlord or property manager, you kind of get in this mindset of like, they're here to, like I got a great property. They're here to win me over, but it's a two-way street. I mean, it's a sales and position really either way, because they're trying to sell themselves and you're trying to sell the property. And you're also trying to sell yourself to them too, as being the person who's going to manage this property.
Yeah. And great tenants screen landlords. There's no question. They want to make sure you're in a relationship with this person for a year. You're paying them for a year. You're going to have to deal with them for a year, usually at least at a time. They want to know who they're getting into with. They want to know that they're getting into this relationship with somebody capable of handling this. And so you do want to think of it kind of from a sales perspective. You do want to sell that person. You want to impress them.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything not putting your best foot forward, So, yeah, that's kind of all we had to talk about in the episode today.
App Toto.
So check that out.
Love it.
We'll reach out to them and see if we can get more information on that. Sometimes they have programs where if you got enough people buying, you can get a discount, bulk discount. Who knows? We'll reach out to them. And then also make sure you check out the show notes today and see how we use canned responses in Gmail to send automated emails for rental listings. And there was one other thing we talked about. What was it?
Well, thanks to everyone in the group who is providing us with these great little quips and things that end up creating content just because we love reading them and not that we love watching you struggle, but we understand the struggle. We get it. We know what you guys are going through. So thanks to John Fernandez and Mark Lapp for posting in the group and sharing and that's what the group is there for.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. And look forward to next week's podcast. And Steve's over here dropping his little washer.
I couldn't make the whole episode without doing it.
Yeah, he's like a little kid. He's just playing with his little washer in his hand. And yeah, well, we're keeping it.
Okay.
See you, everybody.